Ever since the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X initially came out, it feels like gamers have been waiting for that true next-gen experience. A game that is just so epic, it could not exist on the previous generation. Atomic Heart is the first game I've played that truly feels next-gen. It has completely photorealistic graphics, it's got incredibly immersive worlds, it's got breathtaking story, it's just an all-around good package. But it is also kind of glitchy. Let's talk about that. What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here. I hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, this is my brutally honest review of Atomic Heart. Now, this gameplay is recorded on the PlayStation 5. The game is also coming to the Xbox Series X, but for this video, I'm going to break it down into 3 separate chunks. We're going to start off talking about the plot, then we're going to talk about, in my opinion, the incredibly good gameplay, and finish it off by addressing the very glitchy moments that I experienced, because as much fun as I had, there was a lot of very strange technical issues that popped up during my 20-hour playthrough. Now, even during these initial bits of gameplay, you're probably wondering why this game looks so freaky. It has a truly out-of-this-world art style. Well, this is an alternate history where basically the Soviet Union back in the 40s managed to create this special polymer. Think of it as like ultra hyper high-tech plastic. But instead of just using this to make their economy a little bit better, they actually won World War II. Now flash forward a couple years and suddenly they've used this polymer technology to create robots. So even though it is technically the 1960s in a current real world timeline, this is an era where suddenly everything is mechanized. The city we're actually in is flying above the clouds, which brings me to the biggest comparison I'm going to have to make. This game is very BioShock, and I do mean that as the highest compliment. I am obsessed with the original BioShock. I've even got BioShock tattoos on my wrists, so the fact that this very much walks in those footsteps is fantastic. And what I mean by that is that BioShock was a story that felt like it was creating a hyper-realized, specific time period piece of fiction. And that's what this is. Everybody talks very much in a retro fashion, but also there's crazy freaking killer bots all over the place. At the beginning of this game, this is supposed to be the utopian future, a time of celebration. They're unveiling Kollektiv 2.0. Every robot on the planet is synced to a singular neural network. It allows them to get orders, it allows them to get primary commands, it allows them to basically serve you and society better. Well, as they were rolling out this Kollektiv 2.0, everything went completely haywire. Even the most kind butlers or random cleaning droids are suddenly set to kill mode. So they butchered millions of people in an instant. But thankfully, as a battle-hardened survivor of World War II, we are uniquely equipped to fight back. But now, as you try and claw your way through the city, there is a very delicious mystery at the center of Atomic Heart that really hooked me more than anything else. Now, I'm not going to do any spoilers or anything like that, but during the course of this game, our character, who's named P3, he talks a bit about having amnesia. He alludes a bit to the war, to the conflicts he's faced, and why he's even in this city in the first place. And really, what motivated me more than even the spectacular gameplay, what got me to keep playing a lot of times was just the incredibly good mystery to it. Hour after hour, chapter after chapter, zone after zone. I mean, I kept just being so deeply intrigued by the just really impressively done writing style to this. It never feels too dramatic. I also like the fact that this game has some incredible voice actors. The main character himself is a bit of a battle-hardened jerk. Sometimes he is overly cold and flippant, but I like the fact that a lot of the droids that do actually speak English, that aren't instantly trying to rip out your jugular, they have this forceful, chipper tone. Like, One of the most crazy aspects of this game is that you do a lot of detailed conversations. You can actually interrogate people. You can get information. You can try and basically pump people for any bit of extra data as to where the next secret is. But this also includes dead bodies. Some people have actually gotten a freaking polymer implant that lets them work better as a person. They can control robots more efficiently. Well, when they're dead, since it's connected to their brain, they're actually stuck inside their dead body and able to talk for a couple hours. So there's main missions where you're interrogating actual freaking recently dead people about, hey, let me try and avenge you. Where's the door code? Where do I go? Where's that next big boss? This game is such a uniquely gorgeous, messed up, dark fantasy, and I love that. But let's face it, if this was just a great story, you'd watch it on YouTube. What else is important is really, really good gameplay. I love the combat in Atomic Heart. I think it takes a bit to get going. The first dungeon is very, very, very long, but by the time you've left it, you've got upgrade systems, you've got magic, you've got guns. You're able to actually fight back. Now, in this game, I will say, it takes some patience. A lot of these bots have this group thing called the alert level system. These robots are not dumb. I mean, they didn't just take over the planet in 15 minutes by being completely ignorant. They're actually connected via this big neural network, which means that when you're trying to go around and fight back, if one particular robot sees you and it's got sonar on it, it can actually radio for help. Now, there's 3 separate levels of alert level that you're going to encounter. 0 means that basically the one robot you're trying to fight is going to battle you to the death. Robot warning level number 1 means everybody nearby is instantly going to charge you. This happens a lot, especially in the underground, and I think it's definitely, even on its own, is pretty dang difficult. Whereas robot level 2, this is straight up when they are calling for backup. They're actually radioing the nearby storage factories to drop in a lot of extra bonus units, and these robots are very, very tough. The foes we face come in a lot of different flavors, so they are very much able to be straight up humanoids who are going to just try and punch you to death. There's dudes that can shoot literal laser beams out of their freaking eyes. There's bots that originally were made to cut down trees, so now they just got a straight up chainsaw face. There's a lot of different dudes, including there are these drones that actually float around and can convert dead bodies into basically plant zombie nanomachine freaks. These guys are terrifying and they multiply. So if you're not able to kill them and burn the nest out, they will just keep picking up every corpse they can and making more and more of these split-headed freaks. I love the combat in this game because of impact. When you pull the trigger on that freaking shotgun, or you charge up one of your electrical shocks to try and stun people and catch your breath, it has such a wonderful sense of hit. I loved everything from the pistols to the little stunners you get. I mean, this game feels so fantastic, but it's also heavily based on this crafting system. So pretty early in the game, you start building your own weapons. You can make stuff like axes, big wrench-style things, twisty gears and stuff on a stick, but you can also make very standard Russian-style weaponry, pistols that were very famous during this time, or big heavy rocket launchers and stuff. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, but everything still feels sort of grounded in its own absolutely insane way. I love the believability and absurdity is shoved together into this delicious sandwich. But that also brings me to the crazy upgrade system. So while you're exploring, while you're killing bots and stuff, by just holding the shoulder button R1 on the PlayStation 5, you just use your magic glove, which is like a little tiny nanomachine on itself. It will magnetize in all sorts of crafting materials. You can loot dead bodies, you can loot nearby shelves. I mean, you can just soak up so damn much of this crafting material. But once you get it, it's these individual raw components, different styles of adhesives, biomatter, metal bits, and by using this, it's able to make it so you can craft more guns, more upgrades, and straight up even more ammunition to specially fit whatever weapon you like most. But this also brings me to the open world aspect of it, because yes, in between the major dungeons, there is a very, very big map that has a shocking amount of side content. Now, they call them test labs, which sounds like such a simple name, but it's actually these really big, cool, impressive side puzzle dungeons that have you going off the beaten path to unlock more really in-depth upgrades like extended clips, less recoil. Even how you upgrade your guns is actually surprisingly deep. There's tons of different upgrades that can change the elemental types, the cartridges, the grips. I mean, the depth of this game is kind of insane. Now, there is also upgrades for your character himself. Now, these, in my opinion, are pretty basic. They're very straightforward. It's upgrades like, take less bullet damage, have more health, you get an extra dash. I mean, most of the upgrades I unlocked during my 20 hours were pretty straightforward. But this does also have a magic tree. There's a lot of different elemental types that you can channel through your glove. Shocks, freezes, burns, and stuff like that. For my entire run, I just used electricity because the more I leveled it up, it started to hit multiple people. It had extra damage. It had pushback. I mean, I didn't really see a reason to ever stop just straight up shocking people to bits. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But speaking of broke, I do want to talk about the unfortunate technical problems I ran into. For the most part, I think this game looks and plays fantastic. I think visually, it seems to be, just a very smooth frame rate. It's very obviously popping when it comes to its graphical presentation, but I did encounter strange problems pretty frequently. Enemies that would T-pose for absolutely no reason. I found this weird glitch where sometimes an enemy would have like a silhouette appear before they did. So like if a guy was about to bust out of a vent, I would see someone standing outside the vent for a millisecond before they actually spawned in. I did also encounter some times where like a puzzle would break. At one point I wasted 45 minutes because I was in a dungeon and I was looking for a door key and I was following the exact hints and I could see where it was supposed to be, but it just didn't spawn in. So I ended up having to revert back to a previous save file from 45 minutes before that, play back up to that point to make sure the key properly spawned. It's a bit of a pain when that stuff kind of happens. I did also encounter weird texture issues at times. Buildings would become slightly transparent. I did also notice times where like certain pieces of grass and stuff would have a little bit of pop in. None of this stuff is at all game breaking, but I do think it's worth noting. I do want to say though, this game is extremely political. I do think this is probably going to be the most controversial aspect of it, but it is political in the exact same way as BioShock. It sets up a utopian fictional society and then shows the cracks in it. Obviously, when it came to Andrew Ryan and Rapture in the original BioShock, it was all about Ayn Rand's objectivism, which some of you may not even know what that is, but BioShock was very heavily centered on a specific political ideology and deconstructing it in a way that was honestly really freaking fun. This does that as well. This is very much about communism, the whole idea of collectivism. I mean, they talk about our friends in China. They talk about the evil capitalists in America. I think the story itself is conveyed in a way that feels very centered. It feels very serious. It reminded me a lot of a game like Spec Ops: The Line, something that is very political just on the very surface of it, but it's incredibly freaking cool to see. And honestly, it doesn't detract from the story in order to deconstruct and really kind of, break genre molds. I liked the story. I like what it was doing. And I really kind of respect what they're trying to go for here, even if some of its bits don't quite work. My last major problem that sort of unfortunately exists throughout the entirety of Atomic Heart is sort of the way that puzzles take place. I'm kind of shocked to say this, but the game is almost 40% straight up puzzles. There's magnetic rooms where you're trying to bounce different currencies off the ceiling and change stuff out. There's big puzzle museums where you're actually trying to twist and turn gears and think about things in a critical, logic-based function. There is a ton of puzzles in this. And a lot of times, it does feel like they don't give you enough hints. You guys are obviously having a chance to play this after it comes out, so if you get stuck, you can just Google the solution. But let me tell you, there were times where I straight up just stared at my screen for like 10 minutes trying to figure out what the heck the game wanted. Sometimes it wasn't just a matter of like following an icon or trying to figure out some basic clues. Some of this stuff is very vague, it's very obtuse, and you end up having to listen to like a side audio log to get a hint as to where a dead body that you can question is to get a door code. And that just feels a little bit too much for a game that, let's face it, is sort of just a first-person shooter first and foremost. And additionally, the other puzzle problem is the millions of locked doors. This is insane. So throughout every single dungeon, there's usually about 15 locked doors, and each of them has to be solved with a tiny little puzzle. Some of them are rhythm-based, some of them are locks you have to pick, some of them are weird logic bits where you're having to move dots around and think spatially, and a lot of this stuff, I mean, each individual door lock is not difficult. It's just that there are so many of them. I actually tried to count. By my rough estimate, I think there is about 95 locks that you have to do in order just to finish the main story. 95 separate minor puzzles. And sometimes they do sort of break up the pace. When I just had a big firefight, when I've just finished killing a boss with an incredibly long health bar, it does feel a bit strange to then be picking locks and pushing little buttons and stuff like that. Because, I mean, sometimes I wish that I could keep that tempo up, keep that tension high. And instead, I gotta try and figure out how to get past that next ridiculous barrier. I have to say, overall, Atomic Heart really blew me away. I really liked this. I was not sure going into this if it would live up to the expectations, but in my opinion, it sets its expectations very early on. In the first hour, you kind of get the perfect idea of what this entire game is going to be like, and it absolutely nails the vibe it wanted. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's head over to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Atomic Heart a 9 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big old thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already, and please do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Oh boy, man, playing this game before launch seriously was such a trippy experience because, I mean, honestly, the plot is just so freaking fun, and having no idea what's going into it because obviously I didn't see any spoilers. Man, huge credit to the writing team. Wow. Would you kindly subscribe? Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.